Turkmenistan, a land of contradictions. Internet censorship in Turkmenistan is so strict that even accessing the official presidential website is a challenge for its citizens. One of the world's largest wedding palaces stands proudly, yet couples must pay bribes to register their marriage. Furthermore, newlyweds are required to take at least 3 photographs with the president's portrait. Imagine that. In Turkmenistan, they once believed they had found a guaranteed path to paradise. Thrice reciting the Ruhnama, a philosophical treatise penned by the first president, Saparmurat Niyazov. However, after his death in 2006, this seemingly magical recipe mysteriously ceased to function. The Ruhnama, it's claimed, states that one should not spare emeralds for their beloved women, yet the country's laws prohibit female officials from wearing any jewelry at all. Turkmenistan's borders are tightly sealed. However, the authorities do everything they can to encourage people to flee the country. Is economic development even possible under such circumstances? Why does the Turkmen government persist in its path of tightening restrictions? Let's return to this sacred book. Niyazov didn't just write the Ruhnama as a mere reflection. He aimed to create a veritable guide to life for all Turkmen. Moreover, he essentially rewrote history within its pages. The Ruhnama claims that Turkmen were the pioneers of numerous inventions, including the wheel and the cart. It also asserts that they were the first to smelt metal. According to Niyazov's version of history, the ancestors of modern-day Turkmen established more than 70 states across Eurasia. Historians, however, present a different account. Until 1991, the Turkmen did not possess their own independent state. The very term Turkmen entered common usage in the 1920s, with the establishment of the Turkmen Soviet Socialist Republic. The republic was primarily known for Kushka, the southernmost point of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, a fact familiar even to schoolchildren. In the 1980s, the city of Mary also gained widespread recognition, housing one of the Soviet Union's largest military bases, from which Soviet soldiers were deployed to Afghanistan. That seems to be it, or so it appeared. Turkmenistan, situated in the south of the USSR, held little interest for most, except perhaps for the fans of the cult film, Kindzadza. Let's consider the Karakum Desert. Incidentally, the fictional planet Playuk, featured in this film, was actually filmed in Turkmenistan, near the city of Balkanabat. Otherwise, it was a typical agrarian region struggling to cope with its arid climate. For instance, to cultivate cotton effectively, the Karakum Canal, stretching 1,445 kilometers, was constructed by 1988. Imagine, 34 years of construction, involving people from all corners of the USSR. The effort was worthwhile, as the canal significantly increased the area of irrigated land. The country could now cultivate cotton on an industrial scale, and it seemed they needed nothing more. Locals peacefully toiled in the cotton fields and cultivated oats. The oil and gas industry primarily employed Russians. When the August coup took place, Turkmenistan remained silently on the sidelines. The leadership did not utter a single word regarding the unfolding events in Moscow in August 1991. When the USSR dissolved, Turkmenistan met its independence with a degree of surprise. There were no upheavals, revolutions, or even a struggle for the presidential post. Consider this. The majority of Turkmen were rural dwellers. A true intelligentsia did not exist in the country. Russians residing in Turkmenistan either returned to Russia or did not aspire to power. This presented the perfect conditions for the rise of authoritarianism. Remember that ambitious individual, Saparmurat Niyazov? The man who would write the Ruhnama, his personality cult engulfing the entire nation. By the time the USSR collapsed, Niyazov was already a party leader, a member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union since 1962. He seamlessly and logically became the first president of independent Turkmenistan. The logic was simple. Niyazov's personality cult had begun to take shape even during the Soviet era. Eyewitnesses recall that when Niyazov returned home from Moscow in 1990, his aides literally kissed his hands at the airport, doing so with genuine sincerity. However, what's far more significant is that this elevation to power wasn't imposed from above. It truly reflected the people's will. Such are the echoes of the Eastern mentality. And you know what? Authoritarianism in many ways saved this country. It sounds strange, but it's true. The firm hand of government helped Turkmenistan avoid numerous problems. Look at this percentage breakdown. 90% of the population is Turkmen. Turkmenistan is a mono-ethnic state, unlike neighboring Uzbekistan or Tajikistan. Turkmenistan's foreign policy, however, presented cause for concern. Just look at its location, the rebellious Afghanistan to one side and Iran to the other. Such neighbors compelled Turkmenistan to remain vigilant. Upon assuming power, Niyazov's first act was to declare the country's complete neutrality. He stated that Turkmenistan would not join any military alliances, hoping to prevent the country from becoming a target for external enemies. This strongly resembles Switzerland's stance. And it must be said, this approach, mirroring Swiss neutrality, proved effective. In 1995, the United Nations adopted a resolution on Turkmenistan's permanent neutrality. Unfortunately, a resolution declaring Turkmenistan as wealthy as Switzerland never materialized. Simultaneously, the country gradually closed its doors. Entry was severely restricted, again for security reasons, to prevent the infiltration of radical Islam and other destructive elements. This strategy also proved successful. Turkmenistan navigated the 1990s relatively peacefully without major upheavals. But how did the country plan to develop within such rigid constraints? President Niyazov had a straightforward development plan, which can be summarized in 5 words. We will live like Kuwait. He didn't specify which period of Kuwaiti history he had in mind. After all, in the 1980s, Kuwait was invaded and severely plundered by Iraq until the Americans intervened and restored the situation. However, outside of this period, Kuwait truly surpassed Dubai. Skyscrapers, wealth, sheikhs, and a population receiving substantial income from the sale of natural resources. Niyazov reasoned that since Turkmenistan also possessed vast reserves of oil and gas, making the country wealthy would be effortless. He overlooked one crucial factor. The success of Arab countries hinges not solely on resources, but on the leadership's ability to manage the resulting wealth effectively. While Arab monarchs graduated from the world's best universities, Saparmurat Niyazov attended the Leningrad Polytechnic Institute and the Higher Party School, clearly insufficient for understanding market economics. But was that the only issue? Of course not. Azerbaijan found itself in a similar situation, but it had mentors in the form of Turkey, and the Azerbaijani market remained open to foreign investors, significantly boosting its economy. Niyazov, however, decided that Turkmenistan would single-handedly earn all the world's money. And do you know where he decided to begin? With the writing of his ideology, that very book, the Ruhnama, which translates to Book of the Soul. The author intended it to be the sacred book of all Turkmen, containing the nation's history, moral teachings, and philosophical reflections. As you've seen from the beginning of this video, the historical facts in the book proved to be largely fabricated, and the moral teachings often contradicted common sense. Only a Turkmen can make a Turkmen a Turkmen. Take any Turkmen. If they're happy about something, they're either writing music or poetry. Admittedly, it's hardly representative of great philosophical pronouncements, and such wisdom fills 400 pages, even mentioning that the biblical Noah was actually a Turkmen. It's unsurprising that this book became a subject of ridicule. The Ruhnama asserts that the Turkmen invented the wheel. Nobody disputes this. It's just that other nations were producing computers and traveling to space at the same time. But the Turkmen themselves had more pressing concerns. Niyazov made the book mandatory reading, integrating it into the culture and lives of the people. September was renamed Ruhnama Ay, Ruhnama Month, and Saturday became Ruhnama Gun, Ruhnama Day, during which every Turkmen was expected to read this sacred scripture. Needless to say, schools introduced a separate subject dedicated to the book, with exams in universities, and every institution had a Ruhnama corner. Furthermore, representatives of Western companies working in Turkmenistan were obligated to translate the Ruhnama into their native languages. The entire country was supposed to live according to the rules outlined in the book, but the reality was quite the opposite. Consider this. Niyazov wrote, "Tourists from all over the world come to us. Our doors and our souls are open to you." Simultaneously, he closed the country's borders to the rest of the world. Let's read on. "The greatest power given to man is his mind, and science is the means of liberating this power, its emancipation. Yet science became increasingly inaccessible, as Niyazov also shut down the Academy of Sciences of Turkmenistan. Furthermore, the book claims that Turkmenistan's current leadership is incorruptible. However, the president himself constantly reshuffled his entourage, with numerous high-ranking officials ending up in prison due to bribery. It seems corruption did indeed strike them in the harsh Turkmen climate. The contradictions between slogans and reality were unimaginable. Yet if you think about it, there was a profound purpose behind writing this book. Do you guess what it was? The Turkmen were never a unified people. They were various clans and tribes inhabiting the same territory. The Ruhnama's primary goal was to unite these people and instill in them pride in their country. Admittedly, the goal was largely achieved. Patriotism flourished, a nation was forged, and the actively promoted ideology certainly contributed to this. But of course, it wasn't the only factor. Improved living standards also boosted the people's faith in their country. When gas prices surged at the beginning of the 21st century, Turkmenistan began to live lavishly. Gasoline cost next to nothing, gas was free, food prices were low, and utilities were also free, all subsidized by the state. While it fell short of the wealth of Arab sheikhs, the people lived quite comfortably. Furthermore, crime rates were low due to harsh and relentless law enforcement. An oligarch class did not exist, as the money from resource sales went into a common pot, benefiting the entire nation. A classic formula: sausage in exchange for loyalty. Amidst improving living standards, the people increasingly respected their ruler, the father of all Turkmen, a title bestowed upon Saparmurat Niyazov, even renaming January in the Turkmen calendar in his honor. Niyazov was fond of changing names. However, the internet often mocks Turkmenbashi's megaprojects. Did you know that he outlawed all infectious diseases, including cholera and AIDS, forbidding any mention of them? In 2005, he ordered the construction of a zoo in the Karakum Desert to house penguins, not to mention the 14,000 Niyazov statues that stood in every Turkmen courtyard. Think about that. 14,000. The same number of Lenin statues erected throughout the USSR. Compare the sizes of the Soviet Union and Turkmenistan. It's frightening to calculate the density of these statues per square meter. One could overlook all this, as Niyazov did create a modern Turkmen nation. Moreover, the glorification of one's ruler is common in the East. The problem lay elsewhere. Successful Arab countries invested their oil revenues in various development projects, not just skyscrapers and monuments. Today, any citizen of the Emirates can receive an education at the world's best universities. Despite abundant natural resources, the oil industry in Dubai is no longer the mainstay, as Arabs actively invest in science, business, and tourism. The Turkmen did the opposite. Schooling was reduced to 9 years, university education to 2 years. Circuses, opera, and ballet were closed as phenomena alien to the Turkmen, and all foreign diplomas were declared invalid. Apparently, the government didn't need an intelligentsia. Turkmenbashi closely monitored events in neighboring republics and categorically prevented any encroachment on his power. Hospitals dismissed all junior staff. Their duties were divided among doctors who already earned substantial salaries. Why not have them clean the operating rooms in their spare time? Pension eligibility criteria were recalculated. Formerly, men needed 38 years of continuous work, but the calculation was complex. If a man started working at 18, he could retire only at 82. Such mathematics. The Academy of Sciences was closed, and as you can imagine, there were many similar projects. In 2006, after another announcement of Turkmenbashi's robust health, he suddenly passed away a few months later. New presidential elections were held, with an unprecedented 6 candidates. This was a breakthrough for Turkmenistan. A joke circulated: Turkmen, choose Ishanguli Nuriev, because we can't pronounce the names of the others. The Turkmen disregarded this and chose Gurbanguly, who reinstated opera and ballet but otherwise continued his predecessor's path of absurd spending. He was no longer Turkmenbashi, but Arkadog, meaning patron. A new president, a new title. And what did this new president do first? He removed the statues of his predecessor and replaced them with his own. Imagine the cost, considering the colossal number of statues across the country. The Ruhnama was also relegated to the past. Its study became optional. Its sanctity, it seems, vanished. This new president also decided not to lag behind, writing more than 6 books instead of Niyazov's one, including Turkmenistan, a country of highly spiritual people, sport, the path to friendship, health, and beauty, and a horse has both loyalty and fun. Plenty to read considering that most libraries in the country were closed, according to Turkmenbashi, because nobody went there. And where else are Turkmen petrodollars being spent?